Hello, friends. Welcome back to Building Value with Jason Nellis. You might be surprised to learn I'm still Jason Nellis. My family and I are still traveling. There's lots going on to fill you in on. I promise in an upcoming episode I will do just that. But for today, let's talk about my guest. Today, I'm speaking with Christopher Chapman, who was formerly the Global Creativity and Innovation Director at Disney. For 17 years, he helped organizations within Disney improve the way they work and improve the way that they communicate their creativity so that they can build better, build faster, and build smarter. He and I met through Imaginology, his current agency, where he helps organizations and individuals think more creatively. Chris and I spoke on a number of subjects, including applications of AI and the work that he does, how he managed to do all of his work during a pandemic when a lot of it needs to be done in person, and how a lot of the work that he does can be applied to individuals rather than large groups if you just tweak some of the ideas. If you like what you see, if you like what you hear, then subscribe, follow, leave me a comment, leave me a review, whatever you feel moved to do. This is Christopher Chapman. And here we are with Chris. Chris, thanks for joining, man. Good to have you.
Jason, stoked to be here, man.
I appreciate that. Not everybody is. Sometimes it feels like the Spanish Inquisition. You never expect it, but here we are.
Love the curiosity. Always here for that.
I'm glad. Well, I would be remiss if I didn't speak first a little bit about, the big chunk of your career at Disney, right? You were there from 2002 to 2018. You worked as art director for Disney Experiences, Parks Experiences and Products. And then you were a global creativity and innovation director. So I know, as I'm sure you do, lots of people whose life goal it is to work at Disney. Was that yours? Right. Is that where you were aiming for post-college?
Yeah, it goes back to when I was really young. The joke was when I was about 5 or 6, I knew I wanted to work at Disney. And I was told a lot by people outside of my family, that's impossible. And then through my life, it became a little more real as I went to art and design school. And I started telling my dad, I'm like, hey, I really think I want to pursue this. And he was like, hey, yeah, if you want that, go for it. And he gave me some thoughts and steps and ways to think about that. What the galvanizing moment of serendipity was, I was a sophomore, and I saw a billboard, little thing up my campus that said Disney's coming to campus. I was like, okay. And I went, listened, and they offered something called the Disney College Program, which was an opportunity to either do a summer or a semester off for exchange of some credits where you got to do something through their Disney University program. You worked in the parks, you had open doors for networking. And so that was my first touch point, working at Disney Animal Kingdom, selling ice cream and popcorn and Cokes, and outdoor food and beverage, while I got what they affectionately called a Mouster's degree or a doctorate. I got the doctorate after Donald Duck, true Disney fashion.
That hurts.
It was priceless. It does. I was kind of like, it's cheesy in all the right kind of ways.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was kind of the path, and then everything was a small step. But I was laser focused on wanting to be a creative inside the Walt Disney Company.
Love that. Tell me a little bit about, when you start off in that space and you grow to where you ended up in the end of your time there, you can't do it alone. Nobody can. So I'd love to hear a little bit about sort of who were your mentors, who helped you along the way, and, more broadly, how did they help you sort of think about creativity within Disney, which is such a large and bureaucratic company?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first shout out I have to give is to Quinn Kimball, who is at Disney Design Group. He's somebody I met through networking, and he took a shot on me. Like, he saw my portfolio. I was eager like a baby dolphin, probably even a little annoying. But he saw something in me, and we met at like kind of a little mini conference while I was interning. And that was the first part about relationships. Quinn was always amazing at mentoring the next group coming in and paying it forward. And that became a massive part of my life. Another one was Chuck Hoffman, who's inside the advertising group there, a group creative director. He would just go to lunches. We go to lunches all the time and intellectualize things. He'd give me great advice. For example, of never go anywhere where you're the top dog. Always make sure it's somewhere where you're stretching and pushing to learn something new and being challenged. But other ones, Tony Baxter, a Disney legend, Imagineer, who led everything from uh, Splash Mountain to the creation of Disneyland in Paris. Just an incredible legendary Imagineer that took me under his wing to just share philosophy around storytelling and kind of the human experience. Byron Howard, Oscar-winning director of Zootopia, same kind of graciousness of just like spending time with me, having lunches with me, and sharing kind of what it's like to advance in your creative career and what it means to like satisfy your inner truth when it comes to creativity, especially when it's also inside something that is a corporation, and is a business. Christina Reed, who was a producer in animation, Karen Milton, who worked with Adam Grant. I got connected from Adam Grant to Karen. She just kind of been advising me on startup and organizational health. Lauren DeVilliers, who also worked, she was at ABC, a mutual friend of ours. She's been a great mentor, and recently she introduced me to Eric Coleman, who used to be head of TV animation. These are all people who, when they see someone who shares the same values and believe in what you do, have just really taken their experience and the ups and downs and paid it forward. And it's been invaluable. And I aim to continue to do that with people that reach out to me and share some of those same values.
When we think about the arc of a time at a company like Disney, right? You're starting sort of at the low end of the org chart, so to speak, and you're working your way up. How did these mentors help you think about your trajectory? Because I think for a lot of folks, you think about a big company, you think about like, I got to play the politics game. I got to, sort of find my little corner and take it from there. And it sounds to me like you got a lot of support from folks who let you build your skills and do all the things that need to happen in a big company, but also dream and think about things outside of a standard, company matrix, right? You really got to paint with a broad brush as well as a fine one, it sounds like.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes without saying, another mentor that kind of galvanized that for me was Duncan Wardle, who was heading up the innovation and creativity group that I was hired into. And he took a shot on me, and him along with the rest, kind of as I was thinking about my development, I never wanted to play the game of climbing the corporate ladder. I despise the game. It's not part of my DNA to try to climb a ladder for titles for the sake of doing so. My whole thing is, am I fulfilled with what I'm doing creatively? Am I enjoying who I'm working with? And am I making a positive impact on both those around me and those I'm making things for? That can be a massive disservice in the reality of what it is to be inside any company, because there is a certain trajectory that happens where you start gaining more influence for the decision-making power you want to have. So Duncan gave me a ton of autonomy to essentially run my own incubator consultancy within Disney. And arguably one of the greatest gifts I ever got from a leader, like true autonomy. So within that, some of the other advices that I got were counterintuitive. I thought I was going to stay with Disney until I retired. And not necessarily from the people I mentioned, but other executives had said, Chris, I want you to recognize something. Climbing the ladder does not mean you'll have more control. It doesn't. I remember hearing Bob Iger talk about how part of his percentage of his job is just managing and speaking to Wall Street. The stakeholder game gets more complex the higher you rise. The risk does, and you being accountable, which is a big learning for me. There's one thing when you're a creative being protected by leaders to not feel the impact of failure. The leaders that are protecting you from that, they're taking it on the chin. They're falling on the sword. And so it's a different world at that level. So I think that was another realization of, do I want to keep climbing this to become, who knows, like, a president of one of the divisions of Disney? I didn't feel a motivation towards that. I felt a motivation towards working with people and telling great stories and using design, art, and creativity and business to make it happen. So I think that was a big kind of wake up call for me, I think, on that journey.
I appreciate you're reflecting on something I've heard many times in my own career. I remember particularly back at my time in Hulu. I worked with NBC Universal. Disney was not my assigned account, but I do recall we used to hit a lot of friction with executives who'd climbed the what was originally GE and then became the Comcast Universal, tree. And they were very happy on their little spots, but some of what they were managing were technologies that were slowly fading away. Electronic sell-through on platforms like iTunes, even DVD or VHS. That was still a thing at that point. And the pushback we got constantly from those folks when looking for rights or the ability to stream certain content that they had locked up in these archaic contracts, they wouldn't let us have, because as you were talking about, they had never given themselves the space to really build something creative or flexible or nimble. They just found a fiefdom and they wanted to protect their fiefdom until they got to retirement. It's refreshing to hear your story about how you really balked that. You really said, I need to go find my own space and not be the person who is a thorn in somebody's side 10, 20 years from now. What was it like? It sounds like you were able to make some change at Disney, though, in your role, because you wouldn't have gotten that pushback. You wouldn't have gotten that feedback if you weren't doing something right.
All right, so there is a pretty galvanizing moment in my career related to that, where we were in a brainstorm. It was our group within Disney Parks, Parks and Resorts, Disney Consumer Products and Experiences, and Pixar Animation Studios. And I remember sitting there watching different levels of leadership in the room. A-type extroverts dominating the conversation. Some of the most brilliant introverted artists and designers not speaking. A person up front with a flip chart and a marker, and all of us whispering in the back, none of these ideas are ever going to actually happen. And I had this kind of moment of epiphany of like, what is going on here? Like, I knew how startups were formed. I knew how our work was effective. But whenever I saw cross-functional groups come together or try big initiatives, it was always too many cooks in the kitchen. It was always the loudest voice wins. And it was always just this kind of like, we're going to have a brainstorm, which most people don't even know the history of, which is Alex Osborne got a quantity to find quality. So within those, I stopped and I said, I need to take a step back here. I want to look in like, what is brainstorming? What is innovation? What is creativity? What is collaboration? What is inventing? And I started having conversations with Walt Disney Imagineering. At that time, Target was crushing it, talking with them. I was talking with people at Stanford that had the D School and trying to get underneath what all this meant. And I started to recognize the human element internally for when people come together, collaboration, chaos. And it can be a magical mix, like Jordan and the Dream Team during the Olympics, or if you watch The Last Dance, a galvanizing moment. But often you're getting people put together and you have to recognize everyone has potentially different criteria for what success means to them. Everybody might have a different communication style. Everyone might have a different relationship with fear and risk. Also, there's different thinking styles. So to headline all of this is I started recognizing not just the human element of who the idea is serving, but also the people that were creating it, that there are systems and structures that can unlock that. And they can be super light. Systems and structures can destroy creativity, but they also can unlock them when they're gentle, creating scope of a playground, et cetera. So realizing the empathy required for everyone's experience was really kind of a galvanizing moment and launched me out of that kind of art director position into really exploring that next role of global creativity and innovation director.
It sounds to me as if you really felt a calling to go help people directly, that you were not seeing the light and the path taking you through more Disney time to help folks internally, but rather exit. Was that transition out challenging for you? And what would you say was the biggest takeaway from that time that you still hold with you?
Going back to Byron Howard, the director who directed Zootopia, I went and met with him. And I sat down and I was just like, I'm having a kind of internal creative purpose crisis, because I grew up with Disney, believing so much in stories that can help us relate to each other, to ourselves. Having seen the educational side of Disney and things like Epcot and theme parks that are about helping people create tangible memories and kind of these milestones, and to really find joy together as a family. All these things meant so much to me, and my mission, of empowering people's creativity and collaboration and to reach their full potential. I'm sitting here going like, I don't think I can stay within Disney and do that as effectively as I would like to. And Byron gave me some great advice, and he just said, hey, look, like, just recognize you could always boomerang and come back, but you could go out and find something that's so much more meaningful, impactful to the world. And so that gave me the first step. I then went for long walks with people across the company having these conversations. And there was a certain point where I was offered, kind of would say, the last hope. I was offered an opportunity to pitch to become the head of culture for Walt Disney Imagineering. It fell through in the 11th hour because someone moved out of that division that I've been reporting to. And I sat there and I'm like, now's the time. I knew intrinsically now was the time. And I started thinking about leaving. And at that same time, they started layoffs. And I took a separation package. So I kind of got the nudge out the door. But what I want to share with you from a vulnerable place is I had to go through an ego death. My identity growing up, aspiring to work at Disney, 15 years at Disney, I got to a place where I started having to separate myself from that and mourn the loss of it. I went to therapy. I talked to friends and family. I had to mourn the creative storytelling purpose side of that and recognize myself as an individual and recognize a deeper kind of rebirth of what are my values? What do I stand for? Because I think what happened in Disney was I had my values, but just like anywhere, there are corporate values, but there are many different people with different types of values. So I was able to go through a very hard time. I went through a small depression, but I was kind of planted in the darkness and reborn out of it, more clear and sharper on what I wanted to do and why I was doing it. And it was incredibly, incredibly hard, but I don't regret it for a second. Forged through the flames, if you will.
I appreciate the vulnerability of that. I had a somewhat similar experience with my 3.5 years at Meta before I was part of their big layoffs, and I wasn't dreaming of working at Facebook. So I can only imagine how much more difficult and impactful that must have been in your experience. Tell me how you then think about, okay, I know I've got this skill set. I know I've got this passion for creativity. You and I both come from, a background of, children's theater, creative drama, right? This sense of play at work, right? Play as a tool, not just as a sort of recreational activity. How do you then start to think about your current work in your daring play and Imaginology at large? Like, how does that turn into something that you think, okay, I'm ready to go bring this to other organizations, other people, and sort of preach a philosophy of, dare to break out of your structures and try new things. It's really okay. You can always go back home, kind of an approach to it.
Yeah, it was interesting. When I left, I had a lot of friends internally at Disney just say, why don't you create an external Walt Disney Imagineering? And it was aspirational for me. And I had another journey of like, is it that? But I kind of went through this reevaluation of what you brought up about children's entertainment and theater and some of my biggest heroes, right? Mr. Rogers, Walt Disney, Jim Henson, LeVar Burton of Reading Rainbow, and of course for Star Trek fans out there. And there is this educational component. If you look at my DNA, mom, a teacher with artistic talents, my dad, a photographer, architect, agency guy. So this marriage of learning and doing and the curiosity and the courage found in play, core to my values. On top of that, at a higher level, so if I took those as kind of the underpinning values, as what's my North Star? And the North Star was always put people first, always be experimenting. So
Love it.
that sparking play and those foundational aspects of play, I that was in there, but I had to start doing to find those things. So the doing was, okay, if we're not going to be, I don't necessarily want to just recreate a Imagineering externally. I started just taking a service I knew I could provide, which was going in, understanding someone's needs around developing ideas, and lead design sprints and lead workshops. Other people also said, we saw your background. Do you do trainings? I would just say yes, because I did do some of that, at Disney, where we'd pair the learning with the doing. Skill them up in how to do design thinking, run that. So I started with that. And as it evolved, I started to recognize I worked with some amazing people, from doctors and physicians to filmmakers, product owners. It started this kind of realization of how vital the human element of the creator is. And so I started just evolving that along the way to be a development of both people and their ideas. And so we ended on being a creative consultancy. Some still call us a creative agency. End of the day, we're more than that. We serve those two things, and that's kind of a light trajectory of how that evolved.
A lot of folks who had experience in your space would think more in the direction of, how do I take this learning I have from all these years at Disney and make it as broadly available as possible and become what I'm generously going to call an online guru of sorts, but a creator, right? Somebody who puts that content out into the world. Tell me, what was something like that ever attractive to you? Because it sounds like,
yes.
Oh yeah. Okay, good. I hit the nail on the head there.
It's not. The question's fascinating because I've struggled with it.
Good. Okay. So tell me about that struggle, because that's something I constantly struggle with too.
I have no interest in being an influencer. I have no interest in the term of influencer. I love that term's dying. It's becoming makers, more of that, and creators. When I look at people out there that they write the book to sell conference speaking, and the conference speaking sells the book, and then they sell some kind of workshop that may or might not work, and they build a following, and then it's about monetizing that makes me want to vomit. But I think I had a wrong lens on it. Adam Grant shared, a lot of people go through that self-promotion. I think there's a duality in there of both imposter syndrome, which is very real for anybody. But then also this notion of like, I don't want to make my business about promoting myself. And so Adam put a lens on it and said, it's not that. I respect the way he does it in a very deep way. He's like, you are honoring the message. You are in service of the message. So when I was creating Imaginology, everybody's like, no, Chris, it should be chrischapman.com. You're selling Chris Chapman. You're selling Chris Chapman. I'm like, well, I know I have a value for that, but I want to, Imaginology, it's bigger than me. So Adam's approach was that, and I remember immediately my personal website, I changed to thedaringplay.com, because I was like, it's not chrischapman.com, it's the bigger message. So I'm starting to recognize the importance of me being a person that can put up the flare in the sky that says, hey, we believe these values, and this is how we're doing that. If you're into it, come check it out, have a look. I think that's been the big pivot for me.
You do realize you're speaking on a podcast that for the first 10 episodes was called The Jason Nellis Show. Not because I was being self-important, but because I literally couldn't come up with another name. So I just want to call out.
And here's the
that
thing,
hits home.
No judgment in that. I still think there is an aspect of that. It's like, I think
Sure.
Adam Grant's site still is adamgrant.com, but he still elevates his books, and you can, it's a very fine line. It might not be on the surface, but when you can smell the bullshit.
Yeah. Yes.
When you know someone's just self-promoting and you know it's all in their ego, look, we all spend our entire lives either being aware or on the spectrum to unaware of our ego. If the removal of that and saying like, I'm here to do something, and that do is not promoting me. That's not the end game. So it's like something I love about you, Jason, when you and I met, we connected was we're kindred spirits. We both have this passion for things that are value based and the things that we walk our talk, right? So I commend you on that. And the cautionary tale is you are also a carrier of your message, therefore your name for the show works. You know what I
Well,
mean?
that's very generous of you. And by the way, I think the term for the two of us is nerds, and I'm good with that. Um,
Yes, absolutely.
but no, I mean that's also part of the reason why I've been trying to rebrand it as building value with Jason Nellis, because for me it's more about,
Ooh.
talking to creators and I want to say not just creators but people broadly in what I think of as the creator economy, who aren't just, as you so adeptly described, selling you crap, right? I don't want to talk to somebody who built a big following in YouTube with their shorts that were generated by AI just so they could sell a bunch of
Yes.
merchandise,
And they're
right?
just
Like,
hacking psychology for click
right.
throughs. And then they're also just reskinning what everybody else has already put blood, sweat, and tears in doing. And they're like, oh, I'm just going to lift that and I'm going to try to make money off of eyeballs. That turns me off so fast.
So I'd love to learn a little bit more about the
Hmm.
tenets of the company specifically. So like what are your pillar values? What are the things that you want to bring to the table if I'm a company that you're speaking to about an engagement opportunity?
Absolutely. So we like to call it the North Star. Some call it your big why or your purpose. Ours is to spark childlike courage and curiosity. Um, the reason to do that, we lose it. You know, when we're children, I talk to this with adults all the time. You went through this exercise. I have them draw something they used to play with, or a game they used to invent with people, but really unpack underneath that what they felt back then. You hear they felt free, they felt more joy, they felt more experimental, they felt limitless. So sparking that childlike courage and curiosity as a bridge into adulthood is really so we can improve humanity's creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking, right? Creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking, vital skill sets for our future. So that's applied in our current mission as a consultancy to stoke this daring play with business and creative teams. Underpinning that North Star are values. And those values I brought before, always be experimenting and always putting people first. Um, Underneath that are really the behaviors that are teachable, measurable, and we can hold ourselves accountable. Because look, we're all going to drop the ball at the end of the day, but we can point to these things. It's like the ultimate creative brief. So experimentation supporting behaviors show up through walking the talk of curiosity, courage, and play. And then people first shows up through empathy, care, and transparency.
All of that sounds great, but there is a big hiccup that I've been thinking about as we've been talking, which is that when you started the company in 2018, 90 some odd percent of people were in their office. Now there's hybrid working, there's fully remote folks. How do you take the tool set you normally take to an office and apply it to a hybrid or even fully remote setting?
Oh, this is a great question. Um,
Thanks. I feel really good about it.
in the beginning, no virtual collaborations, full stop. I'm still an adamant supporter of in-person work. I think we have over-indexed on virtual, and I think we're going to see a massive snapback. Um, there is loads of data out there that shows how vital it is for us to relate to each other. We are social creatures, being in proximity with each other. Let alone a new study that came out that shows that people are happier when working with their hands. When we work with paper and drawing and sticky notes instead of in a Google Doc, your joy index goes up. Your brain works differently. It's kinesthetic. Push that to the side. There are realities. There are people who need to work from home. There's life situations, from having kids to flex working, being in office and then also working from home. So how do we, to your question, how do we apply this stuff in a virtual environment. There's many aspects, but let me just give you maybe the top three. Number one is within everything that we do, a big core of this is how we show up with our mindsets. So yes, we have structures. Let's think of it this way. If there's an engine, that's our design thinking approach, which we call design thinking 2.0, also known as empathy design bias. If that's our creative problem solving framework, and that's the engine, and the tools we use to spark people into thinking differently, to crack insights faster, to get aligned, to visually unpack and hear people's viewpoints, no matter how diverse they are, and those are the pistons. An engine needs oil, and that's the mindsets. So if you don't have the oil in the engine, the pistons are going to heat up with bad friction, and the engine's going to lock. So even if you don't use our process, and we often adapt with others to their process to make it work, it's the behaviors and the mindsets of how we show up. So in the virtual environment, we were forced to test it during the pandemic, doing some stuff with Nike and with Apple, and it worked. It worked fantastically. So what we saw there was, yes, it does work. No, it's not our top preference. But when we put those behaviors as a priority, everything else can fall in line. So I think that was the biggest learning from that aspect, is to make sure that we place light structures around helping people create greater awareness around their behaviors and how they show up as they collaborate and create together. The work
You spoke about challenges in adjusting to the rapid change of things like COVID and being home for the pandemic. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and really, particularly in the modern era of AI and the big scariness of AI that everybody is dealing with. I'd love to hear what you think about rapid changes in the marketplace and how what you bring to the table can help buoy and in some ways surf the waves of this constant change. What do you think about how we can use AI in the workplace in an effective way, even though some people see it as being something that takes their job away?
The work I do is agnostic to a discipline or an industry, which can feel counterintuitive sometimes for a lot of people. Because at the end of the day, it's problem solving and people collaborating where they can thrive, right? So as the exponential rate of technology comes in, and the great human experiment of how we exist on this planet changes, as we saw a force factor come in from the pandemic and the great resignation and quiet quitting and all these things. The constant here that keeps bubbling up to the surface is specifically related to something I believe I brought up earlier, which is the three vital core skills we will all need is creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking. Some might add in a fourth one, communication, but I consider that a subset of collaboration. So within those, I think it was actually at the World Economic Forum, they spoke about this related to AI. And they said, like, critical thinking is going to be vital. And I've already noticed with people that I work with that can transfer their skills into using AI as a tool. Yes, is there a threat with AI? Absolutely. This black and white thinking has got to go. It's like fire can shoot bullets, can melt human beings, and can burn down entire cities. Guess what? Fire can also cauterize wounds. It can cook food to make it safe, and it can light the dark for us. So when I look at something like AI, what's vital is that we can have creative conversations, and creativity defined as, conversations around new approaches that are useful. Critical thinking, be able to reductively unpack the pros and the cons and make decisions together, right? And the collaboration piece, come together and turn, which from me versus you to me and you versus the problem. And if we're able to continually boost, refine, hire, celebrate creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, we can take on the exponential change from technology, workplace environment, anything else that's coming down the pipeline that we can't even fathom right now. We all know it's coming.
My background is a hybrid of media and technology, right? For most of my career, I've been at that intersection where creatives and, for lack of a better term, bureaucrats and pencil pushers kind of meet. So
Okay.
I know that when I bring something to the table, I've got to have it backed up, not just with a compelling narrative, but it's got to have hard science. There's got to be data. So
Right.
talk to me a little bit about beyond, the collaborative structures you're talking about and the ways in which we can be creative with each other. Like, what's the data that backs this up? Because I assume you have some, and more importantly, it's compelling.
There was a certain point in my career when I was recognizing the expansive creative dreamers and kind of people that were more analytical um, had this tension. And I saw that I was kind of a bridge between both the expansive artistic dreamer and kind of this reductive, pragmatic realist. And when I was introduced to data, Tim Clota, who was in Parks and Resorts Digital, I think he was VP at the time, introduced me to a term called being data curious. I'd always used research as an approach to create anything. So I started digging not just only into my research, things I've seen, heard, read, or experienced, but I dialed into that reading part of how can I make sure what I'm doing and what we're applying is both getting feedback from people we work with, but also looking at large studies and anchoring in it. So we've constantly used these, and I'll share three that come to mind that have kind of become somewhat of cornerstones to what we do. One aspect is, as we grow and develop people and their ideas, we use an approach of learning through doing, right? So learning in simulated projects as well as real projects or design sprints. We want to make sure people are getting sticky learning so they can do it without us, but also they're getting that kind of learning while they're applying it themselves. And the reason we prioritize play is that, yes, it brings joy. It opens up people's subconscious minds. It allows more creativity and expansive thinking to flow and makes the reductive thinking far more enjoyable. But from a sticky learning standpoint, research shows it takes approximately 400 repetitions to create a new synapse in your brain, this kind of connection that galvanizes. But with play, it takes 10 to 20. We are meant to play, right? Like that is what it is to be human. To play is to experiment, to try something, to see what happens if I do it this way or try it this way. It's to rapidly fail and learn and grow in a consequence-free feeling of an environment. So that's one aspect of the science of why we elevate play and those underpinning pieces of play, the beginner's mindset, not married to an outcome, right? Let's go into the next piece. When we're bringing people together and there's cross-functional collaboration, you're going to have unhealthy collaboration chaos or unhealthy friction. But there is required healthy friction. Industrial Light and Magic, Pixar, they thrive on this. Radical candor, feedback systems. However, not everybody is great at doing that in a way that takes into consideration different people's psychology or thinking styles. So you can get cultures that can spin out of control or people that are winning Oscars and making amazing things, but kind of not feeling great about it inside the culture. So what I started recognizing was the research around the psychology of the evolution of human collaboration and the psychology around happiness chemicals. So the headline on this one is stress reduction. Baking in science of how we show up with each other to remove cortisol, our stress hormone that's only supposed to come in bursts, and moving to oxytocin, our trust, support, and social happiness chemical, and serotonin. A happy chemical comes from us feeling secure, respected, and validated in the work we do. The third is navigating fear. Expansive thinkers, the dreamers, the artisans, have this ability to almost shut off the fear mechanism more than others. I live more in the space than I do in the reductive side. I had to learn how to be able to step into the reductive side of realities to help make these things happen. So I had to start looking at the science and the psychology of how we're actually born to reject novelty or new things. Um, I'd love to do this with you. You remember me doing it with you once before. Remember the arm fold thing?
Oh yeah.
You
Yeah,
just
yeah.
go ahead and we can show people on this, right? It feels
Well, if you're
comfortable.
listening, this is a good call to action to tune on to the YouTube
It's a podcast.
version.
So
But
we
yeah,
have our arms folded right now. We just
yep.
naturally fold into. Shake out your arms
Ugh.
and now cross them the other way.
Oh God, I can't even.
And how's that feel, Jason?
It's super uncomfortable, actually.
Uncomfortable, awkward, because
Yeah.
your brain created repetitions your whole life. So this is comfortable and safe, kind of like the executives you talked about working with that already had an existing business plan, structure, it's secure. We're born to find systems that make life easier. So when we try to change these things, we feel threatened by them, and then we reject the call. If you're familiar with the hero's journey, Joseph Campbell's work around all stories, we are all born at some point to reject. We're in an ordinary world, and there's an invitation called adventure to an extraordinary world, a new world, and we reject that call. So working with that and accepting fear, Brene Brown talks about fear is allowed to be on the road trip, but it has to sit in the back seat. It can't sit shotgun or drive the car. So welcoming fear and addressing it instead of stuffing it down and trying to avoid it, um, and baking that into our kind of make, show, test, learn approach when we're prototyping has really also helped bring in psychology and science into how we can get ideas through the gauntlet of we can't do that. It won't work.
One of the things you mentioned, radical candor, is something that I've often had a challenge with, and I want to also say, I appreciate you sharing some of the magic ingredients in the secret sauce, so to speak. But I do think it's interesting that you know a lot of times, both in the creative space as well as in the entrepreneurial space, you find folks who read a particular philosophy in one book, Radical Candor, or the Lean Startup Methodology, or Rick Rubin has his book on creativity, which is more about sort of waxing poetic than a specific framework. But in all of that, you find folks who glom onto one thing. And I'm remembering a specific time when I worked with somebody who had read the book read a book on Radical Candor, and then basically was just saying whatever was top of mind without really having a filter. And I think it's interesting that you speak to the idea of sensitivity as an actual integral part of all these things that you're describing in terms of systems, because it isn't just about the output. It's about how it's received. It's about how it's processed. And then it's about a cycle of flow of information and emotions and discussion, rather than somebody feeling empowered to say whatever their id without any processing just wants to put out into the world. Do you find that there are folks that are sort of stuck in those sort of, they get attached to one characteristic of your framework and then they can't break out of it? Or do they see the forest for the trees as you go through the work with them, and it's easier for them to sort of process all of it together?
There's an importance of this is really about awareness above all else. Awareness that you are, again, another Brene Brown quote, you are different like me. So within that, to recognize when you're working with people that are highly expansive in the arts and creative efforts, or engineers or marketing and strategy people, there is a spectrum of different thinking styles there. There's a different spectrum of emotional relationships, emotional awareness. I've worked with people who have shared with me about their ADD, Asperger's, Tourette's, many different conditions, or people that say, I am an anxious driven person. So my primary function I've been hired to celebrate is to look for risk. Just be able to have those conversations and understand where someone's coming from helps us understand their feedback. So it's one thing to have radical candor, and Pixar became famous for this. It's about the idea, it's not about you. While at the same time, I've seen people deliver radical candor in a way that cuts. So finding a way to dial up empathy and define empathy not as walking in someone's shoes, but rather to believe in someone's experiences, even when it doesn't match our own, is the vital aspect here. And we can start forming a common language as a bridge here. We can start creating buckets of like, hey, right now we're just going to talk about what's working with this idea and what we love about it. Maybe it's sending people off on their own for long periods of time to come back together. But when we come together, ensuring we can have radical candor in a way that's transparent, but also comes from a place of care. And it's a skill set we can build up and build repetition in. And when that happens, there's the trust, there's the bonds. Hard conversations are vital, but we can do those in ways that build trust instead of just advance a product. Like let's take care of each other while we also take care of the thing we're making.
Does this all apply equally across companies of varying sizes? Like, does this work? Because you've done work with like Sony, you mentioned Nike, ESPN, Kaiser Permanente, right? Those are massive companies with giant workforces. Does this work at a company of 1,000, 110 people?
Absolutely. So I'm going to start with the caveat of this does work, but what I don't do is I don't scale it. So if you have a 50,000 person organization, what I came to realize is I'd have to work with one organization and the CEO and the board of directors for 10 years, right? Maybe 5. I work with team individuals from 1 up to teams in groups of 250 to 500 people. The beauty is I've seen it transform those lives beyond, and it's spread in organizations. But I've worked with film directors developing TV shows, directors and producers. I've worked with product owners and teams of 4 and 5. I've worked with just senior vice presidents one-on-one. We've worked with teams of 7 to 12 that are cross-functional, marketing, sales, an external agency, the internal creative agency, right? So it's really, it can be applied on an individual or larger basis. And that's kind of a really beautiful aspect of it that I really enjoy. But it's definitely about impacting the people we're there with, and helping it extend not only in that space, but in their professional lives, yes, but also in their personal lives. So that's kind of been the sliding scale of size of groups we work with.
A lot of your work started with big companies, and I know you've worked with smaller companies. I'm a solo entrepreneur. You were solo at the beginning. A lot of my listeners are folks who are at the beginning of their careers as independent creators and business owners. How do you take these principles of creativity, of fun, of play, and apply them when you're one person working by yourself?
That's a fantastic question. So right now, as we're working high touch with individuals and leaders inside groups and corporations and creative agencies, et cetera, what I think the next evolution for this is pointing back to proof points that we got from working with large groups and seeing how the work we did with them stuck in a way that they were able to apply it to their personal and professional lives. So I'll give you 2 examples. The first one was working with a major food company, and at the end of a 4-hour session, he came up to me and he showed me a text, and he said, "I just texted my wife and apologized for my lack of active listening over the past 20 years of our marriage."
Wow.
Another executive in that same session walks up and goes, "You need to do this for marriage and for couples." So that being said, that impact and awareness is one example of it going there. But now to your point, how do we then create greater access for people like him to continue that work? We have our own approaches for that currently, but now how do we scale that? Well, we looked at Nike. We'd worked with leadership, 250 people, groups, smaller groups, and saw that same kind of stickiness happening, not just on the project, but for the individual. So our next evolution that we're exploring right now is what does it look like for us to scale out deeply engaging content that still applies hands-on learning through doing to embed the learning. And we don't know what that might look like right now. Might that be digital? Maybe. I'm more interested in what might that look like to send out, kits that you open up and you can start workshopping things yourself in simple, no nonsense ways that create very tangible applications to what you have right now. So I think that's the next evolution to help reach a greater and wider audience that you should look for in the future.
I smell a merch store. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I would never degrade it to that point.
No.
Thank you. I mean, this has been really insightful. I appreciate not only your deep history with Disney and how well that applies to so many other areas, but the playfulness as a theme for life is something you don't hear very often from folks. And the fact that you've been able to take it and turn it not just into a career, but I think in many ways a philosophy is really refreshing. If anybody's excited, wants to learn more, what's the right place to send them?
Yeah, absolutely. You can check us out at www.imaginology.co. Again, imaginology.co, and take a look and reach out.
Awesome. Chris, thanks so much. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
Jason, fantastic time, great questions, and appreciate you, man.
All right. See you next time.
Ciao.